We begin today chapter 25, which will be actually a concluding chapter for this section, chapters 18 through 25. We began this section to try to understand how is it possible that this thing should be very near to us, this relationship with God, Torah and mitzvahs, should be very near. It seems to be difficult, a challenge. And what we had spoken about previous to chapter 18 was about a manner of that the mind feeds the heart. The heart has some kind of feeling, or at least an intellectual love that leads to an understanding heart. And that leads us to behave through our actions, through our speech and thoughts, to do what God needs from us, to serve what we were created for. And we said, well, not everybody has the capability, not everybody has the wherewithal for that, because that means a lot of learning, a lot of Tanya and beyond that one needs to have under their belt in order that they have what they can think about, that the mind should actually inspire the heart to bring you to do. So then, chapters 18, we brought about what we call another kind of love. It's called an ava meseteres. It's a hidden love, because it's part of the soul. It's the makeup of the soul. And we explained what is the uniqueness of this kind of love. It's a yearning to connect to its source. Why? Not for self-fulfillment, not for any feeling of completion. Actually, the opposite. Just to be enveloped in the source because it comes from that source in the divine. It's actually beyond logic. It doesn't make sense, actually. If you recall, some great length we spoke about that. Because everything in this world wants to be. Right? Only because of the outside force does it change it from what it is. Because everything wants to be what it is. Except for the divine soul, it doesn't want to be. It just wants to be connected to its source in the divine. And that's why the metaphor that we used is a flame. Candle of God is the soul of man. So that flame flickers upwards because it wants to be, it's like, you look at the flame, it looks like it just wants to get out of itself. It wants to be up, And then we went on to explain. So that connection that is hidden within us, because we have an exterior layer that is covering up, well, it brings us to actually to express itself, that deep connection, more times than not, when it comes to a question of faith, or it comes to a question of our of sacrifice for our, we'd be ready to sacrifice our lives, not to give up our faith, not to give up our connection to God by accepting another faith, another religion. And we see throughout the generations that indeed did happen. Thousands of times. Thousands of times it happened. And now the question is, and this is what we dealt with through chapters 20 to 24. Oh, so you mean that hidden love will bring you to die for God? That's not the point. The point is to live. So how do we bring that idea that you'd be ready to die for your faith? How do you bring it to live for it? It's easy to die one time, harder to live daily. So what we came to is an understanding of the nature of the world, the way God creates it, that from his perspective, we are united and bound up to him, but from our perspective, we're separate entities from him. We are not bound up to him from our perspective, instinctually in our experience. And therefore, we need something that's going to bring that inherent union. That's what Torah mitzvahs do. So through a mitzvah, and we explain 3 degrees of, or 2 degrees in a mitzvah of connection, and the ultimate connection through what we're doing now, study of Torah, that there's a perfect union with God, that we kind of bridge the gap from our perspective, from his perspective, that we are not separate from him. We are bound up. The mitzvah allows that to happen. And likewise, what we explained yesterday in the 24th chapter is that sin separates us. It separates us in the moment of doing something wrong. That's what we've learned. So with this, the Alter Rebbe says in this chapter, now, and the one word of this chapter, to sum it up, is bereshusai, with permission is given, is granted. We are capable, in other words. Yes, you can. What can you? Well, we're free to rid of ourselves of something that's called the spirit of folly. The spirit of folly is that a person becomes insensitive to being separated from God. Meaning that sin actually separates in the moment me from my Creator, me from my true reality, me from myself, actually. Me from my true self. I'm separated. Also, sometimes we're forgetful, of the connection or how we can disconnect. We're forgetful that we have an inherent love for God in the soul that desires to unite and to cleave through doing what God needs from us, another mitzvah. So we need to know that we can always remember and arouse that inherent love that's latent again in our heart. Even the most hardened sinner is endowed with that inborn love. As it says, b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, meaning that we can find that part in us. And of course, the love is not sufficient, because love means the desire, the yearning to connect. The flip side of that is fear. The fear of disconnect. Right? And just as we would be ready to give up our lives when it would come to a matter of faith, as the sword of the cross had been through the last 2,000 years quite often, and not just from one faith, but other faiths also. We've had it, right? And a Jew who didn't live for God was ready to give up their lives for God. Why? Because it didn't make sense. It wasn't logical. Because what was activated in their soul at that moment was that quintessential point of the soul, that love, that desire to connect and not to be disconnected, as we just explained, came to the fore. And as a result, gave up their lives. So here, surely then we could live for God rather than giving up our lives for him, meaning that I could subdue the lust that I have in my heart, the desire that I have in my heart, that is, a folly. That's, and then I can turn away from that negativity. I can do something positive. Because I don't want to be separated even for a moment. Someone might say, well, idolatry, hey, that's a real separation from God for good. You accepted another faith. That's not true. Even if you accept another faith, the Jew can do tshuva, can do penitence. So it's only in the moment we're talking about is the separation. So the separation is in the moment of that acceptance or that folly of doing whatever negative, whatever is against the will of God. So there's no distinction because we can always change the next moment. But we have the capability that in this moment I am I only want to connect and I don't want to be disconnected. We have the capability, the permission is granted. Yes, you can. A powerful idea that it is totally in our hands, that at any given moment in our lives, that a spirit of folly, and the folly is that when you do something wrong, that there isn't a disconnect. We see this in human relations, that when we do something wrong to a loved one, there creates a disconnect in the moment. Right? The next moment, you can fix that and reconnect. No doubt. That's possible. Now, with God, for sure it's possible. Now, with another human being, maybe not. I mean, maybe they're not going to accept, and therefore they will be disconnected from you, even though you try to be connected to them, right? After you do something with the spirit of folly that entered and did something that wasn't appropriate. But to God, whatever foolishness we have done, it's in that moment that we are disconnected. But the power, we can reconnect thereafter. But that awareness that it's in my hands, I am capable. And this is, I think, the crucial, this is the crucial point. That there isn't an excuse that we can have for doing something that's wrong towards God, towards anybody. We have the capability of not allowing that foolishness to enter, to think that if we do something wrong, that there isn't a disconnect that's created. We have complete mastery and control over that idea, that concept. And therefore that will allow that, and that comes actually from the hidden love that's in our soul that gives us the capability to be aware of this and lead our lives in such a way, if we so choose. This is an extremely powerful idea to live with. And the key over here is, yes, you can, or I can. The Elder believes in us so much that that foolishness that we might entertain, we can overcome it. We have the permission is granted, capability is ours, and the reason is because it's the true reality of who I am deep down in my heart and in my soul. That's the key. It's a part of me. So it's not like I can choose right from wrong because, God said so, and, and that's the way many people, God says right from, hey, he gave 10 commandments. You're not allowed to murder, you're not allowed to steal, whatever. Can't speak ill about another, of a loved one. You're not allowed to speak ill, lashon hara, no. So, if you do that, you're going to get punished. You do this sin, you're going to get punished. That's how most people look at the relationship with God. But no, that's not what we're learning here. Learning here is that the relationship begins from within. That I have the power from within. I have the capacity. I have the permission is granted. The capability is within me. Yes, I can, because it's part of the makeup of who I am. That hidden love in my soul that yearns to connect and does not want to be disconnected from God. I can always have that as my reality. I can bring it to mind and therefore not allow the spirit of folly to override me, to overcome, and to think that in this moment there isn't a disconnect in the foolishness that I, might otherwise choose. That's what we're holding. That's our reality. All right. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts on this? 2 question marks before you ask a question. A reminder, if you want to take this to the next level, we're doing starting next Wednesday, a 6-week course, Meditations from Sinai. And we'll take this stuff that we're doing, bring it to the next level. If you're interested, please go to jlimontreal.com and sign up. At least take a look. Denise, does Hashem present you with a mitzvah in order to connect with Him, giving you the freedom to choose? For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so the course that's coming up, will be on Zoom only. It will not be on any other platform. For those who do sign up, and if they can't make it 1 week, there is a recording of it, just for those who do sign up for the course, though. So again, JLI, Jewish Learning Institute, the acronym, Montreal. Take a look at it. And how do we overcome the guilt and regret from causing disconnections? Guilt and regret we should have, but not guilt. Be careful with guilt. Guilt will lead you to despondence and then lead you to a downer. Just to recognize, and this is so beautiful, how empowering, and we spoke about it at great length yesterday, that, by the way, also you can go to TanyaRabbi.com to get all the latest, or to YouTube, Tanya Rabbi, if you miss something. How amazing it is. The disconnect is only in the moment. Even for idolatry, the disconnect is only in the moment. I can reconnect thereafter. That's amazing. So guilt, ownership, and to recognize the spirit of folly that entered, and to the spirit of folly that entered, and to own that and to improve on that. But wow, the next moment I can just turn around and connect. Golda, what is the best way to help those who, like a baby in captivity, to find the inner connection to God? 1 mitzvah at a time. Someone who is very removed from their Jewishness, bring them to 1 mitzvah at a time to let them connect. Jess has a question. If one disconnects from Hashem due to sin, or prevents oneself just before they commit a sin, but there is still a residual negative feeling, and the feeling of disconnect, how can one ensure that the connection to Hashem is not tarnished or fully restored, even when those negative feelings remain? So again, that's the ownership. We need ownership of the sin, right? Feeling regret and a resolve to do good afterwards, and then do good. So you had a negative feeling, right? You had a negative feeling towards a loved one. Um, I experienced that myself, to be quite frank. Um, and then I realized, okay, that's wrong. And then I transformed the negative feeling to something positive towards that person. So you can change that in a moment. You had a negative feeling. Know that that's a spirit of folly that's wrong. Because what's a negative feeling? A negative. That doesn't mean that you can't say something negative to that person about what they did, but not a negative feeling, right? There's a distinction. Someone did something wrong, and you might have a responsibility to make them aware of it. So make them aware of it. That doesn't mean you have to have a negative feeling. That's a tricky one. I'll learn more about that. But yeah, that we are all capable of rising to that if we so choose. Does that make sense? I hope that helped you, Jess. What happens if one repeats the sins and does other sins and each time? Listen, that's going to happen. We're going to be repeat offenders. It could be repeat offenders. That's okay. That is okay. That's the nature of who we are. We're going to be repeat offenders. We are not a Bainani. We're only Bainani in training. So, anybody on Instagram or on Clubhouse, something to share? I don't see. All right. No one here? All right. To be continued. Lori has a question. All right. Oh. Is connection to Hashem, to God, a thought and a feeling that we are aware of? I'm not certain what you mean that. Connection is a fact, whether you're aware of it or not. We're not going to be truly aware, but we can be mindful of it. But we're not going to experience it. Something we spoke about at great length. It's so powerful, the connection to the essence of God. It's too much that we can experience, but we can be mindful of it, as we need to be mindful right now. How awesome this moment is that we're connecting in a perfect unity with God through our study of Torah right now, which is beautiful and amazing. All right. Beautiful, as always. And to be continued. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Judaism, Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Thank you for joining.